surprise, Bandai just dropped an update to the ban and limited list, and, well, to say that the Digiverse is alive and chattering would be the understatement of the century. 4 cards got hit, each limited to 1, so we're of course going to take a look at the cards and try to understand why it was that they were hit and what the implications of those hits are. Sounds good? Okay, then let's jump right in. Okay, so the first of our 4 limited cards is BT3 Beelzemon. This is a green level 5 with the vegetation trait. It evos for 3, except not really because it has the Digisorption 3 keyword. Digisorption lets you suspend a Digimon in play to reduce the Digivolution cost of that card with the keyword, obviously by 1 for every instance. So Digisorption 1, reduce the cost by 1, Digisorption 3, reduce the cost by 3. In Beelzemon's case, you can, for example, suspend the level 4 that it's evolving over in order to digivolve into it for free, since it naturally has that 3 evo cost. Now, already, this is a little busted. You're evoing into a level 5 for nothing. Bandai recognized this and limited the only other card with Digisorption 3, which is the level 5 Argomon, and they did that way back in the day. Now, this particular card becomes a problem in plant, vegetation, and fairy decks because it allows you to climb to your level 6 pretty quickly and, let's be honest, for little cost. These decks also tend to gain a ton of memory when you have suspended Digimon in play, so yes, it leads to extremely cheap and dangerous level 6s like Bloomlord and Hydramon, which can often be game-ending threats in many cases and are kind of balanced by their high evolution costs. This card also allows you to rebuild your board very quickly, often to the point where other decks just can't keep up. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the most infamous combo this card is involved in is something that I like to call the Bloom Hydra 1-2 punch. So the combo starts with a level 5 Agitarmon. You can suspend it to play out a cheap level 4, usually a red Vegemon. Then you use Digisorption 3 to suspend the red Vegemon and turn it into a Beelzemon. Now you have 2 suspended targets in play, so Bloomlord comes down for just 2 cost, unsuspends, gains piercing, security attack +1, and 2000 DP. So now you can smash your opponent's stack or just straight punch their security for a lot of damage, and then you evo the Beelzemon into Hydramon, gaining a bit of memory back and bottom decking whatever the opponent might have still had in play. Oh, and of course you basically apply an Ice Wall effect to your opponent on their turn, and more often than not you'll be presenting lethal once your turn comes back around as well. So obviously with that kind of speed and flexibility, Beelzemon is almost always going to be included in high counts in these types of decks, which does kind of limit your deck building choices, kind of stops you from playing other level 5s, and of course it does limit future card design for anything in the kind of plant meta archetype, because, well, this is just such a strong option. It's a free evo into a level 5, why would you play anything else? The hit really is warranted, even if it doesn't necessarily feed, for example, into the upcoming Rosemon deck, which a lot of people are a little worried about. And specifically, it's not an issue in that deck because you do have to play the level 5 Lilamon in high enough counts to get the Tamer out so you can actually do your burst mode shenanigans. But of course, something else will just come out down the road and break this card even further, so it's just for the best that it goes now. Next up, we have WereGarurumon promo, which is a pretty obvious and late hit. This is basically MetalGarurumon X's OTK enabler, allowing you to multi-swing and dish out additional security checks with very little cost. Now, I won't go into too much detail here, since people have been begging for this card to go for a long time. Even if Melga has admittedly fallen off, this just needs really good Garurumon support in the future to become broken again, and it's not like Melga doesn't still steal games that it absolutely shouldn't from other more fair decks. It's just that Melga can't really keep up with the other busted decks at the top of the pyramid right now. Now, this is going to take Melga out of contention for a long time, and it does basically kill another OTK, so at least for now, you will not hear me complaining about this hit. Another OTK dies with the hit to promo Grankuwagamon. Again, this has been a problem card for a long time, allowing Grandis, in this case, to basically auto-win when it sees its pieces, and this does stifle the ability for some of the other cool Grankuwagamon cards to actually give the deck some dimension, or just see play in general. And while some people were maybe hoping that the Okuamon promo would get hit to 1 instead, I've actually softened on that opinion a bit. The card is really strong. I think it's a little lame that it's a promo, but I do think it promotes some interesting plays for insectoid decks. For example, makes Hercules Kabuterimon X somewhat viable. So yeah, I think this is the one to go. The OTK is the real issue here. There are ways to play around the memory manipulation of Okuwamon. So, you know, this is the hit. And yeah, taking Grandis out of the way sure is going to buff Greymon decks who just got access to a ton of new support, but I mean, Greymon decks are more manageable now. So hey, there's no argument for Grandis to continue to exist in the current format, and we certainly don't want to see it rearing its ugly head in what, BT13, BT14. No thank you. And finally, we have the limp-wristed slap to Beelzemon with EX2 Impmon getting limited to 1. This card allows you to mill up to 3 additional cards if it's milled by the effect of any other card except itself, which means turboing your trash count and often hitting memory gaining cards like Wizardmon Promo or Deathslinger to extend your turn. Now, it also has some applications as a searcher and a DP buff for your Beelzemons, but obviously that's not really relevant here. Now, this card was actually fine for a long time, and I'd argue it was necessary to give existing and then the more recent Beelzemon support the legs it needed to thrive in its BT11 starter deck incarnation. Because at that point, let's be honest, you were just trying to turbo into a 4-check turn with the starter deck Beelzemon and the new blast mode. And while that's still not my cup of tea, that version of the deck at least afforded people some counterplay, since security bombs or high DP Digimon insecurity could answer the first Beelzemon swing and of course stop the blast mode from kind of cleaning things up from there. Now, the reason this card became broken in BT12 is twofold. First and foremost, Beelzemon X and its line exist. Beelzemon X evolves on Beelzemon for 1, and it trashes one of the opponent's security for every 10 cards that you have in your trash. So often this is trashing 2 or 3, which is almost always game ending since it leads to a swing potentially for game right there, or a blast mode unsuspend and then swing for game anyway. Trashing the opponent's security also affords them no counterplay, and the condition required to meet that trash threshold is supplied, let's be honest, far too easily by the deck alongside the existing support. It's important to remember too that most of the X antibody line allow you to trash 2 on the swing for each of them, and of course when effects are ordered properly, you can easily hit 20 cards in trash by turn 2 or 3 at the earliest, right? Because let's say you mill 2 off your Wizardmon X, oh look, I hit the EX2 Impmon, mill 3 more, hit a couple Deathslingers, okay, now I'm gonna trigger my Impmon X's mill, oh look at that, I milled another EX2 Impmon, etc, etc, etc. Now, the second reason this card is broken, in my opinion, is because it combos with the new I Am Mako Tamer, which is a much more problematic card than I initially thought it was. Because of course it allows you to fix the top of the deck, you just gain a memory right then and there, and of course you often mill a Deathslinger or Wizardmon to essentially make that evolution free or potentially memory positive, which I think is just a little too unfair, and Blossomon just got hit for allowing decks to basically evolve up for cheap, so you can kind of see where we're going with this. It's actually not out of the question that you can go from Impmon to Beelzemon Blast Mode in 1 turn with the right mills. Obviously there's a little bit of luck involved, but, you know, even if you don't quite get there, you're still going to be in a really strong position. And, you know, there's very little counterplay to that memory gain since this deck also has built-in outs to memory blocking floodgates. Now, personally, I would have preferred to see Beelzemon X get banned since the trashing effect is just a little too oppressive and too easily achieved. Without that card, the deck is still extremely fast and threatening, don't let anyone convince you otherwise, but it would at least require a bit more caution, and I think it would be countered by slightly more defensive deck building from the rest of the meta. Like, seriously, without Beelzemon X, you can still deal 4 damage in one go, potentially spawning additional Impmons and clearing your opponent's board without needing, you know, Beelzemon X. You can still put game on board very easily. The deck honestly would be fine. But since that ban is unlikely to happen, I think the compromise position would be to also limit Deathslinger to 1, since it would cut down on the absolutely absurd memory ramp and make Beelzemon X a card that is going to be reserved for later stages of the game. Like, you know, you could actually get to mid-game or late game against Beelzemon. This would also cut down on the sackiness of slamming into a turbocharged Deathslinger insecurity while you yourself are trying to outpace Beelzemon and steal the win out from under it. Hitting EX2 Impmon ultimately is just a bit of a band-aid, because let's be honest, the card is easily recovered by Rivals Barrage or Dobromon if people want to start teching the doggo back in. And at that point, you can of course just stack it with your Eye and Mako again and go to town. And again, let's be honest, you only need 1 or 2 Rivals Barrages to make your game-winning play most of the time to get back the Blast Mode or the Beelzemon X. And you know, you've probably milled your other 2 copies in the course of going through your combos anyways, so yeah, not that hard to, you know, work around the limit. Now, this hit is still something, I think it does slow down Beelzemon that some decks will have the necessary breathing room. For example, I think red hybrids can probably contest Beelzemon a little bit more. But if you think the deck is gone, no. I promise you, Beelzemon is just going to take a short smoke break while players are coming to their senses and realizing that the deck is still in fact very broken. So seriously, it will be fine. Beelzemon is not going anywhere. Alright everyone, and those are the hits, my understanding of why the hits were made, and how I feel about them generally speaking. I've also included a link to Bandai's announcement, and I would encourage everybody to go and actually read their rationale for why they made the limitations that they did at this time. And of course, I would encourage everybody to hash things out in the comments section below, whether you like the list, you hate it, you think there was more or less that could have been done. I'm happy to hear it. I'm sure everybody else is too. Just, of course, try to keep it friendly and be open to other people's opinions as well. Perfect example, I was trying to formulate my thoughts this morning. I was looking to see what other people were talking about, and after a brief exchange with Digipanda, I realized that actually, yeah, Deathslinger is pretty sus right now and probably could have gone to 1 as well. Look at that. I heard somebody else out, my own opinion changed. It's warranted to happen every now and then. And on that note, I will leave you guys all to the lengthy discussions I'm sure we're going to continue having over the next 48 hours. So until the next one, take it easy.